This is a development blog for my game Realm Builder, and I'm going to start with some of the lore I wrote for it. In Realm Builder, you play with other players on a tabletop using cards and miniatures. The aim of the game is to restore your power to its former glory, which is represented by playing cards from your deck onto the map. The land of Albinset is a place where magic and the elements are an everyday part of life. Albinset is also your homeland as a protagonist in Realm Builder. It is your birthright as someone from Albinset to harness the power of the cards. Cards in Albinset are not just physical objects, they are magical things which can absorb things into them, effectively trapping something in them. Albinset is a desolate land rife with poverty. The peasants there are only paid 1 booster pack a month. The redeeming quality of this place is the convenience that comes from card magic. You and other inhabitants of Albinset have struck up a living through the sacred tradition of deck construction, with some techniques being passed down generation to generation. Some clans fill their decks with monsters and weapons, while others focus on spells. Sadly, not all nations are adept at using card magic like Albinset. Your homeland is often the target for raids and attacks of extreme prejudice because of its misunderstood nature. Outsiders will typically know little or nothing about the ways of an Albinsetian, other than that to watch out for what they do with their cards. Despite the continuous raiding, Albinset is well defended on account of the populace being able to summon some monster or tool to aid in various situations. Albinsetians often build a deck to be able to deal with whatever life throws at them. Even non-spellcasters use cards in Albinset to store weapons, armor, and other goods. Because of the usefulness of this ability, trading posts are common here. Albinset is an anarchistic nation where the native Albinsetians have the unwritten yet generally agreed upon rule to not absorb other Albinsetians into cards against their own will. A stone sculpture of a house of cards was erected to commemorate this generally agreed upon rule after several territories signed a treaty against Albinset condemning magical atrocities. The spell for absorbing people has been forbidden ever since. The kinds of magic people focus on in Albinset are conjuring and creating to summon something next to or near them. Some people use effects from their cards to transmute something into their desired material, and these people are called transmuters, while the aforementioned people are conjurers. Whether a person has more talent for conjuring or transmuting can determine a person's profession in Albinset, while others research how to use the elements to cast spells. I'm making this video to kind of help me develop the game better, but also to, for people who are interested in making their own games, I think will find these kinds of videos useful. If you like to write or read the lore, you should write it down and have some of that included in the game, even if you think you're not good at writing the lore or coming up with a backstory. You should still have some of it there, because a lot of people, they like to sink their teeth into the story. In Warhammer, like the game Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, the books, it's sometimes called the fluff, which just means the story or lore, some of the fantasy there. So anyways, getting into the rules. The cost of a card is indicated by the numerical values written on it. There may be even extra cost involved in playing the cards. The values are wealth and element tokens. Your element tokens replenish at the start of your turn. You as a character have a physical representation in the game world, such as a miniature and a card you choose to be yourself that you select to play as before the game starts. You can be a living being at the start. Yes, any living being. Yet some make better characters than others. When you play a card, the resulting effect originates from your miniature representing you on the map. Your hand of cards is drawn from the deck, is hidden from your opponent for strategy. The amount of cards you can hold in your hand, it says, is equal to 5 plus 1 for each party member, but I changed that, so it's just a flat 7. I really realized how overly complicated and how it's too much to track. I wanted to have that mechanic in my game. If you go over that amount, you must put cards directly to purgatory by discarding. I eventually changed the name of the discard zone to graveyard, because purgatory is kind of confusing. It's like not necessarily where things go to die. It's like limbo. If you ever hear the if you ever know or learn about the mythology, purgatory is kind of like the go-to place where for souls that aren't purely going to hell or heaven. Or Hades in in that case. Deck size is not limited, however certain campaigns can have deck size restrictions. Your starting hit points is 10 plus the selected card's hit points. So you're playing as this is an example. This guy has 4 size, this praying mantis guy. You would add that amount to how much hit points you have. So if you're playing a bigger monster, you start off with more hit points. When you summon a monster, they appear in a tile next to you unless the spell or effect allows you to summon them further away. The same rule applies to objects, creations, and game effects. Other units, aka monsters, can go up in stats and element tokens as players do. Map creation rule. At the start of the game, when you place your miniature self, each player creates 1 beacon for air, fire, water, and earth. This is in addition to any structures, fortifications, or party members you place. As in, some players might say, I want to start off with like a few units, so it's not just like 1 versus 1. You could play with a set amount of guys starting in your team. Elemental beacons must be placed 1 square apart from each other and can be things incorporated into the landscape, for example, a bonfire or fireplace. I changed that rule so you can place them however you want, and maybe like make it part of your defensive base. Into the landscape. You spawn next to a beacon of your choice. See, a lot of these things, when I'm like rereading them, I realize that they changed it, and it's just you can spawn wherever. Not obviously not next to the opponent. There's like a set amount of distance. Cards. Okay, the elemental beacons are placed strategically in your base. You choose where they go. The beacons are used by some classes and cards. There's another thing I changed. Classes aren't really a thing in my game, but when I was starting out, it was heavily a class-based game. A beacon is a source of its energy type. Beacons do not heal 1 hit point like food. Just a card to the deck. So what you do is you can use your action to absorb an element, which lets you put the element into a card and shuffle it into the deck. The armor rule. When you have an item equipped in each slot of head, chest, legs, and boots, you get +1 resistance to cut, crush, and pierce types of damage. The armor prevents 1 damage per number of armor, which falls off and needs to be repaired. The game rules. You draw 1 for turn at but not if you go first. If you're the player who goes first, you just get to go first. And then you mulligan, which is deciding if you want to keep your hand or not. I use the partial Paris kind of mulligan, where you, instead of fully sending away their hand, you choose which cards you want to send away, you set them aside, and you draw that many from the top. If you don't like your hand there, you can do it again, but you get 1 less. So you say you send away 2, then you only get to draw 1. You lose when the miniature representing yourself is destroyed. You can run out of cards, and when you run out of cards, you draw the cards selected to represent you into your hand, so you take yourself out of the game and into the hand. And if members of your party cannot add cards to your deck to draw from the map, like when you need to draw, you stay unable to return to the game world, and so the units in your party have to summon you to you to keep playing. But if you try to draw a card and you're not there, then you lose. So This goes back to the absorb action. If you absorb, you can add cards to the deck, an elemental token card. And your teammates can do that. Your party members that you summon from the hand can absorb as well. And some of them even have the ability Absorb 2, which means they can absorb twice per turn. So a snake that can like eat a lot is an example of an Absorb 2. That's how I thematically have it in the game. So the damage types are cut, pierce, and crush, but there's also elemental damage types, such as wind, earth, water, fire, hilarious, scary, dark, and light. Now, hilarious and scary, I took them out of the main game to make it more simple. If you've ever heard of the expression, keep it simple, stupid, that has been helping me a lot, and to kind of like rein it in, make it more simple, just get the game out there. The turn structure. I mentioned a bit about this earlier. Each player draws at the start of the turn. This stuff that I took out. As I was saying about how how each person in your party besides you adds to your maximum hand size. This symbolizes how your friends help you with plans. That's how I originally rationalized how the amount of cards you have in your hand is affected by your party size. You can play cards, attack in once, and move once per turn. Move squares equals speed. We'll get to the stats in a second. When a living being goes onto the map, or any unit, because there's undead and object type units in the game, they can attack and move on their first turn. If you move, then use an action, you cannot use the rest of your speed to move. That's something I might change. When I was playtesting with my friend, he moved and then attacked and then moved back with a unit that had more than one speed. And I'm like, should this be allowed? So not sure if that's going to fully stay in the game. We'll see if it's like too broken, if that's like would make the speed stat way more better than some of the other stats. Food heals 1 hit point when consumed, and that uses it up. Your hit points are equal to your size, and you die at 0. You can play cards on or through your party members if they have the qualifications. So now I'm going into the section of when my game was originally a live action role-playing game. And I eventually decided I want to make more of a card type board game. I don't want to be running a LARP all the time. I did some data mining, asking around people about LARPs, and I figured, you know, I'm going to pivot and make it more of a board game, because that's like what I'm more passionate about and what I'm good at making. More than being the kind of guy that like manages all these social scenarios. If you ever heard of the word impresario, that's like the ringleader of a circus that kind of like manages the talent. I'm more of the creator than the impresario kind of guy. So LARP stat system. It's so weird to me that it was all going to be like this. There's size, speed, agility, guts, wit, and intuition. Let's see if I can hold up what this originally looked like. It's kind of a mess. Okay, that's coming up all right. Go back here. And I have the elemental associations for the different stats on what they're like. Oh, I have gravity written there, electricity, so... And then there's hilarity. Hilarity was associated with fire, air, and darkness. Scariness was darkness. The hilarity and scariness things are more prevalent in a role-playing game that I started writing for this. You can like play as a jester or like different scary type classes. But for now, I'm just focusing on like actually getting the base game out. Earth, physical toughness, HP, how much you can carry. Most resistances based on this. So that's the guts stat. It's good for defending against spells. Water. Governs most non-damaging spells. Capacity for introspection and improvising. And card crafting. Air. Used for ranged attacks. Some spells require high air affinity or training. And push and pull spells. I actually changed this so that air is now the physical damage stat, and wit is associated with fire for range damage. Fire does most damage via spells / abilities. Strength of inner fire, soul power, and then I have explosions written down here as one of the things under fire. Got a section for hilarity, darkness, electricity, gravity, acid, ice. I might have ice and metal be types that are usable later on. It's just a kind of a logistical nightmare to introduce a new element, and then you have to update that every set thereafter. For example, in Hearthstone, they were going to add the Death Knight class, but they didn't do that anymore. Sorry, they ended up not doing that, and I'm thinking about that in relation now because I originally wanted the second set of Realm Builder to be a metal-themed one, but then I'm like, oh, hold on a bit. I'm not sure if I want to be making metal type cards every set so soon. Maybe in the future that'd be kind of cool, but so you can see where I'm coming from. Same with ice. I want to do an ice theme set, but I'm kind of on the fence about having to put out ice cards every single time I make a new set. Card and deck building system. This is when it was going to be more of a live action game where people are running around. Decks can be composed of any type of cards, while there are some deck types you may want to impose limitations on for flavor or balance. If a deck type adheres to a specific set of rules, it can have bonuses. You lose the bonus if you have no cards in deck. Type: brutish. Description: 50% monster or NPC. And the bonus it gives you is one more monster card. This is so far removed from what my game is now. It's you'll have to excuse me if it's like the novelty is like really getting to me. The type is horde. Description: 100% monster or NPC. The bonus is you can have 2 more cards in the deck. Enormity. The bonus is 1 fire card. Guts, you get an earth card. Agility, small object card. Wisdom, water card. The wit, it gives you a wind card. That was switched around, as I mentioned. So moving on. Oh, that's really chaotic. I don't know if I want to... You know what, that's a weird diagram. That's too hard to explain. Player class. This is still with the LARP thing. Hopefully this is useful to some of you out there that are making your own games. Player class can wear card abilities instead of gear, gaining up to 10 cards at starting level. Have 6 card stats if you have no armor on. This is what covers you. The powers gained can be passive boosts, resistances, and spells you can cast. The other 4 spaces on the Celtic Cross Tarot pattern will be the spell slots that double as a passive boosts. So you can have 11 cards equipped if you opt to have the extra over card. Upon becoming the player class, you can use all of your gear stats as spell slots / your passive abilities. Animists, conjurers, and summoners will use their containers mainly to have monsters on their side, sending a fraction of their power to reliably cast summoning spells in the microcosm. This should work as take the conjuring spell as one of your containers, and you can use one of your bean bags to use that spell, because in LARPing you throw bean bags, and that is like, oh, my spell hit you because my bean bag hit you. As for transmuters, who use those stats to morph their body parts into something aligned to their elemental proficiency, if you have each body part morphed, you gain an extra 6 effect that is either a pure or hybrid effect. For a pure earth golem, you get good tank stats. From these transmutation spells, you gain the flying at earlier levels by using your hands as wings, and at higher levels by growing them from your shoulders. This part is about game formats. Self is just 10 hit points. Self is a unit plus 10 hit points, or self is a unit, so you could just play as, say, this one unit here, and you wouldn't have the 10 hit points plus the size. But normally you're going to be playing as at or around 10 hit points. The formats that I have here are 1v1, 2v2, 3 versus 3, etc. I have a VIP, very important person format, where the one very important person on each team must be kept alive or your team loses. And then the serial killer format, where the player with the most player kills wins. Campaign type format. Each player has points to buy cards that start the game on the map. Players agree on a set amount of wealth and elemental tokens to buy cards with, and can be played independently without cards. Play Realm Builders as a pure tabletop strategy game, and even use a campaign list to proxy miniatures of cards you don't have. For example, you have Swamp Mohammerson, that's a dwarven cleric guy. So you write it on your list, and he spawns at the start of battle to fight for you, taking up 1 health and 2 elements. That's his cost, so it would take away from your set amount of campaign cost. And terrain. Players take turns deploying scenery, models, and structures on the map, starting with whoever goes first. Alright, I think I'm going to wrap it up for that one. It's got a good amount of stuff. I look forward to, I want to make more ones detailing how I make the templates, like in Photoshop. And I want to do a video showing how I've been making the miniatures as well. So those are some things that I've been wanting to make. Oh man, this seemed a lot easier making this video in my head, and it's way more awkward and convoluted, just like making this game has been.